Hi, Assassins. I'm Brooke.
And I'm Cami.
Welcome to Bookish Realms.
We're just two girls who can't stop talking about fantasy books.
Welcome to our deep dives of Heir of Fire. This episode covers chapters 16 through 22 of Heir of Fire. Like in past episodes, the chapter summaries and character discussion are spoiler-free, but the rest of the pod does include spoilers for all of Throne of Glass. This podcast is for mature audiences only. Cami, take it away, girl.
Let's get into some chapter summaries. As a reminder, this is a non-spoiler section where we summarize the chapters we'll cover in this episode. So if you haven't read the entire series, but you have read chapters 16 through 22 of Heir of Fire, you can listen to this section. Chapter 16, it's flight time. Manan and the 13 take their first ride on the Wyvern and crush the crossing, a dangerous flying test over the Farian Gap. Not only do they survive it, they slay it. Manan's grandmother rewards her by telling her that she needs to become the Blackbeak wing leader by winning the upcoming war games. And let's just say with Grandmama Blackbeak, losing is not an option. Chapter 17. Celaena is still getting wrecked in training with Rowan. Her body's sore, her mood's worse, and she still can't shift into her Fae form. Later that night, Emrys tells spooky stories about dark fairies, and Celaena listens from the shadows. She also discovers that Rowan's Fae form is a hawk. Chapter 18. Dorian visits Sorsha again, and she asks about the creature that killed people in the castle. The memories hit hard, and Dorian's magic explodes out of him. Sorsha agrees to help him hide it and learn to control it. Meanwhile, Chaol follows Aedion to one of his fake parties and uncovers something big. Chapter 19. Turns out, Aedion is secretly working with rebels, Murtaugh and his grandson, Ren. When Chaol gets caught snooping, Aedion explains that his black ring is a fake, so he's not under the king's control. Chaol reveals Aelin is alive, and just like that, these two start working together. Chapter 20. Back in Mistward, Celaena and Rowan are still fighting constantly. But during one heated argument, Rowan bites her, and Celaena finally shifts into her Fae form. It's a wild and messy breakthrough, but hey, progress is progress. Chapter 21. Celaena's Fae magic explodes, literally, and she accidentally sets the forest on fire. Rowan smothers the flames with his air magic, and they have a full-on screaming match. Furious, Celaena storms off, determined to leave Mistward and find another way to keep her promise to Nehemia. That night, while camping alone, she wakes up to a creepy silence, and we all know that's never good. Chapter 22. Celaena is ambushed by skinwalkers, creepy, nearly unkillable monsters. Rowan swoops in to save her, and together they fight back. Celaena shifts and burns the creatures to ash. Afterward, she and Rowan finally start to understand each other a little better. Rowan also gives her some survival tips, like how using too much magic too fast can burn you out.
Welcome to Character Discussion. As we dive deeper into Heir of Fire, we're introduced to a whole bunch of new characters. We'll give you a quick rundown on the characters for this set of chapters, but for the bigger, more central characters, we'll talk about what's new with them and highlight a golden line from this set of chapters. And don't worry, this section will stay completely spoiler-free. Alright, here's our quick character rundown. We're talking about Faelin and Fallon, Vesta, Sorrel, and Emrys. Faelin and Fallon are green-eyed witches who are a part of the 13. They are more demon-like than witch. Sorrel and Vesta are also a part of the 13. Emrys is considered a storyteller, which is a title of honor among the Fae and humans. He is basically a walking library. Okay, now that we have the new characters that we are introduced to, let's get into the main characters. For the main characters, we will discuss who they are, what we know about them, and a golden line from this set of chapters. For these chapters, we will talk about Celaena, Rowan, Manan, Dorian, and Sorsha together, and Aedion. First off, we start with our girl Celaena. Mistward POV starts with Celaena being sore from shifting. After her shift from going back and forth to human and Fae, she slept for days trying to replenish her energy. She relates the experience to when a Robin had beaten her 2 years ago, and she said it's nothing like what she experienced then. But she is a little embarrassed for pissing on herself in front of Rowan, which, yeah, as she should be. We also learned that people are not really fucking with Celaena because she is training with Rowan, and they don't necessarily trust Rowan because they don't know much about him. But even though she's shifted, she has a really hard time shifting on command and shifting in general until Rowan literally bites her and then she shifts. But she doesn't lose control. She didn't burn her hair, clothes, or melt her daggers. So I guess you could say, progress? Throughout this set of chapters, Celaena is also still really struggling with the fact that Nehemia is dead, but she finally says the words aloud to Rowan in the heat of the moment, and it finally hits her that the princess is truly dead. Celaena's golden line from this set of chapters is when she's talking about Chaol, quote, "Because he's safer if he's as repulsed by me as you are." Next up, we have Rowan. In this set of chapters, Rowan is like a little bit unhinged. He first of all bites Selena, then he grabs her tongue when she's talking to him crazy. But at least I guess he helps Selena when skinwalkers start to track them, so I guess that kind of makes up for it in a sense. But Rowan is not trusted by the people at Mistward because he is very secretive, and they don't really know him. After he gets Selena to shift, he says some pretty fucked up things to her, which prompts her to walk off, which makes sense. But he does try to give her his version of a pep talk, which is really just tough love. But he does follow her after, which eventually helps save Selena in the long run. This golden line from Rowan is not a positive golden line, and it's probably one of the most terrible things that he's ever said, but you would probably have been more useful to the world if you'd actually died 10 years ago. Next up, we have Manan. We only get one POV from Manan in this set of chapters, but Manan was known as the best flyer out of all 3 clans prior to magic being taken away. Her and Ishkra, who is the Yellow Legs heir, do not fuck with each other any way, shape, or form. But anyways, Manan is very excited to be back in the skies and feeling the wind in her hair. Her POV ends with Mother Blackbeak wanting Manan to be the wing leader, which would mean she would lead all of the clans. The rankings would be decided at War Games, but Mother Blackbeak expects nothing less of her heir. Manan's golden line from this set of chapters is, "We are the 13 from now until the darkness claims us." Next up, we have Dorian and Sorsha. We are combining these 2 characters because their stories are very intertwined right now, and they are getting closer to each other. But during their POVs, we find out that Fleetfoot is doing well, which is good to hear. Dorian is opening up to Sorsha about what had been occurring, which means that they're getting nice and comfy together. But when Dorian mentions how the king would have potentially killed Kale for what happened, his magic erupts and basically destroys all the hard work and tools that they had been working with. But Sorsha takes the blame for what happens, and Dorian fronts the cost of all the tools he destroyed. Sorsha notes how scared and fearful Dorian was when the power erupted and described Dorian as needing help. So they agree to figure out a way to try and stifle the magic so no more blowouts happen. Their golden line from this set of chapters is what eventually sets off Dorian. Quote, "He'd kill her, wouldn't he? That's why you said nothing." And lastly, we have Adian. Adian has been playing around and hosting parties but not actually going to them, so he can meet up with the rebels. One night, Kale follows him and he ends up capturing Kale. We'll come to find out the ring that Adian has been wearing is a fake because he could sense that something was wrong with it. So he had a replica made and threw the real one into the sea. But he does not know what the ring does. When Kale finally reveals that Aelin is alive, Adian relives his life for the past 10 years and recalls all the things that he has been called. Wolf, general, prince, traitor, murderer, Otterland's whore, but the one that always meant the most to him was being Aelin's cousin. He blames himself for not saving Aelin and her family even though he was miles away and would have never made it on time. Him carrying the Sword of Orin is a reminder to him and who the sword belongs to. It is also the reason that he does not like Dorian because every time he looks at Dorian or interacts with him, he is reminded of the butchering of his people. Adian was not blessed with any magic like Aelin's, but he does have strength, swiftness, good hearing, and smell. Adian's golden line from this set of chapters is a sweet moment and also tells you how much that he does care about his cousin. He asks Kale, "Is she coming back?" Adian asked quietly. And that's it.
Let's explore this world. Here we cover the main world-building elements that come up in chapters 16 through 22. We'll revisit these places and world-building elements in other episodes. For today, this section is not spoiler-free, so if you haven't finished the entire series, please do not continue. But please come back when you have. In this set of chapters, we meet Emrys, a story keeper, a title of honor among both Fae and humans in Wendlin. Story keepers are like living libraries, tasked with preserving the kingdom's legends and myths through the art of oral tradition. Story keepers collect and share tales that have been passed down for generations. When Emrys begins a story, everyone gathers around. Chairs and cushions are pulled in around the hearth, food is shared, and the room quiets down. It's a moment when the past comes alive, with ancient stories told in kitchens and community spaces that have been a part of Wendlin's culture for thousands of years. Emrys's role is not limited to simply recounting stories from human or fae mouths. He listens for tales wherever they may come from, even from sources that are neither fully human nor fae. His stories include legends of old, of fairies that once roamed the land before mortal kings took the throne, of mysterious creatures on ancient roads, and of nights when the wind itself seems to speak. This oral tradition is how folklore gets passed down. The act of gathering to listen and share these tales binds the community together, ensuring that even as time moves on, the past remains a vital part of everyday life. Emrys's work as a story keeper keeps the history of the kingdom alive, one story at a time. Just as in our story, oral tradition has played a central role in preserving our own human folklore. For centuries, myths, legends, and everyday stories have been passed down by word of mouth, connecting generations and keeping cultural identity alive.
This is our analysis and foreshadowing section, which is not spoiler-free. We'll break down parts of the text that tie into or foreshadow future events in the series. If you have not read all of Throne of Glass, stop here. Like, don't continue. Like, I'm just telling you now. Please don't continue. Going once, going twice. All right.
Let's get into it. We're back in Mistward with Celaena and Rowan. Celaena's trying to recover from her strange encounter of the third kind with that thing in the barrows. And our girl is unwell, TBH. Quote, Celaena braced her hands on the dresser and grimaced at her reflection. She looked like shit, felt like shit, even more grim and gaunt than yesterday. She picked up the tin of salve Rowan had given her, but then decided he should see what he'd done. And she'd looked worse 2 years ago when Arobynn had beaten her to a bloody pulp for disobeying his orders. This was nothing compared to how mangled she'd been then. Again, we've talked about this in like every single Heir of Fire episode, but Celaena's outsides match her insides right now. Looking at herself in the mirror is just another reminder of how empty she feels inside. And she wants Rowan to face her and see the damage that he's caused. None of this feels new to Celaena. She's been here before, at rock bottom, beaten into a pulp by Arobynn for the situation in Skulls Bay with Rolf.
Despite it all, Celaena keeps going. She heads to the kitchen to start her work. Emrys and Luca are both taken aback by Celaena's appearance. Celaena tries to play it off and says she's been through worse, but Luca can't let it go yet. Quote, Luca said, "What do you mean?" He eyed her mangled hands, her black eye, and the ring of scars around her neck, courtesy of Baba Yellowlegs. She silently invited him to do the calculations. A life in Otterland with Fey blood, a life in Otterland as a woman. His face paled. Celaena bears the physical scars of everything that she has been through. In a way, Celaena doesn't need to explain her trauma. Her appearance is literally showing all of it. And when Luca realizes what her life must have been like, especially as a Fey-blooded woman in Otterland, he is simply too shook to speak. He shut his mouth real fucking quick. It makes the moment in Kingdom of Ash when Aelin realizes her scars are gone even more painful. Those scars are her reminder of what happened and what occurred to her. And let me just say, when that part happened and she's like, where are they? Gut wrenching.
It's one of the worst moments, honestly. Jail time for SJM. But the moment passes and Celaena settles into her kitchen duties again. And she meets Malachi, Emrys's mate. And then training with Rowan starts again. It's miserable, it's cold and rainy. And again, Rowan wants Celaena to shift and she simply can't. So they're at a standstill. Quote, at least she didn't lose control again, no matter what insults he threw her way, either aloud or through one of their silent, vicious conversations. Again, Rowan is not being very nice, but we have to comment that Celaena once again notes that they're able to have these silent mind speak conversations. We have zeroed in on these. I refuse to let them go, but she mentions it again.
Tyrion. They then go back to Mistward with no success. Celaena takes a bath and tries to warm up, but she's starving. So she heads down to the kitchen. And when she gets there, Emrys and the crew, they're setting up for story time. Because again, Emrys is a story keeper. We covered this in worldbuilding, so we won't comment too much on the lore behind it here. Throughout this book, Emrys tells some very, very interesting stories. The one in this chapter, quote, long ago, when there was no mortal king on Wendellin's throne, the fairies still walked among us. Some were good and fair, some were prone to little mischiefs, and some were fouler and darker than the blackest night. It was those wicked fairies that you always had to watch for on the ancient roads, or in the woods, or on nights like this when you could hear the wind moaning your name. Emrys' story reminds us that fairies used to exist alongside humans before the kings had ruled. And the only fairies that we've really met in Throne of Glass so far are the little folk. So we have to assume that they're similar to them, or maybe they're a little different. Some fairies were kind, others were playful, but the darkest ones were truly fucking dangerous. And people were honestly taught to fear these dark fairies, especially in wild places or specifically at night. And Celaena ends up piecing together Emrys' story and his stories about Maeve and realizes that she can use Athriel's ring as a bargaining chip, which slay.
As Emrys finishes the story, Celaena catches a glimpse of a hawk outside. A very familiar hawk. This is when Celaena realizes that Rowan's animal form is a white-tailed hawk. The same white-tailed hawk that watched her get drunk and fight in Varys. Celaena doesn't know why Rowan would bother listening to Emrys' story, but he does say the whole time. Eventually, the story ends, and Selena gets up as everyone seems to be waiting for the next story to begin. Emrys stops her and asks her to share a story from her land. To this, Selena replies, "No, thank you." But internally, she thinks, quote, "But she had no right to tell those stories as if they were her own, and she could not remember them correctly, not as they had been told at her bedside." Selena feels like she doesn't have a right to her own history, her own folklore. This is again like all tied into the belief that she abandoned Terrasen and her people. And sadly, even if she felt like sharing, she can't. She doesn't remember them. They were told as bedtime stories, but it's been like over 10 years, and those 10 years were filled with Selena trying to recreate herself and also filled with a bunch of fucking trauma, which can affect your memory.
So Selena walks away and goes to her room, but this moment sticks with her as she tries to fall asleep. Quote, "She had no stories to tell. All the legends of Terrasen were lost to her, and only fragments were strewn through her memories like rubble." Selena just feels like it's all been lost. She feels like Terrasen was lost to her, and as the rightful heir to the throne, it makes it all so much more complicated. How can she be queen when she doesn't even know the legends of her own homeland? And honestly, like, to lose your folklore is to lose your history. It's such an important part of cultures and traditions. And I feel like it also like ties you back to that and like makes you remember like who you are and where you come from. And because she has all these things are lost to her, I think that's also why she has such a hard time grappling like with who she really is.
And so Selena mostly like keeps to herself. She does her tasks in the kitchen. She quote unquote trains with Rowan, though she still can't shift. So training is kind of just at a standstill still. Quote, "So they swore at each other, sat in brooding silence on the temple ruin, and occasionally had those unspoken shouting matches." The enemies to lovers is like firmly in the enemy's territory right now. I like rereading this, things are really tense between the two of them. Their relationship, if you can call it that, is rocky, and it's built on like their tempers and their silence instead of trust, at least for now. But again, Selena mentions their unspoken shouting matches. They can sit in silence because they have that other option for communication. And honestly, like we are living for it, even if at this moment the two of them are not.
Yeah. But honestly, like some progress does start to happen. Selena asks Rowan to let her see him shift so she could see how he does it. Quote, "Her memories of the Fae and Terrasen were foggy, as if someone had smeared oil over them. She couldn't remember seeing one of them change, where their clothes had gone, how fast it had been." He stared her down, seeming to say, "Just this once." And then this is low-key such a vulnerable moment for Selena. She doesn't tell him out loud that she wants to see him shift because she can't like remember how the shift happens or how it looks, but just the fact that she feels comfortable enough in asking him is honestly such a good sign because we all know that she is the queen of like, I'll do it myself. And Rowan like actually lets her see it, which shows some flexibility from his end too. Like, please just kiss, please.
I love them.
I know.
And this shift is like, it is kind of interesting. Selena sees a soft flash of light, a ripple of color, and boom, there's a hawk where Rowan was. Selena notices that his clothes and weapons are gone and that it only took him like a few heartbeats to shift. And then Rowan shifts back and, of course, tells Selena, "It's your fucking turn now." Selena is taken aback by the shift and it makes her see Rowan in a different light, even if it's just like for a few seconds. Quote, "She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her tremble. It was incredible to see the shift. Where do your clothes go? Between, somewhere, I don't particularly care. Such dead, joyless eyes." She had a feeling she looked like that these days. She knew she had looked like that the night Kale had caught her gutting Archer in the tunnel. What had left Rowan so soulless? Again, this is just like such an important moment. Selena fears shifting into her Fae form. She fears her magic. But when Rowan shifts, she can admire the shift. She says that she thinks it's incredible. She's also allowing herself to be curious by asking, where did his clothes go? And like this answer is so vague to like, what do you mean between, Rowan? I need specifics. I need the details. Where are your things going? And then there's Rowan's eyes. Selena starts realizing how dead they really are and that her eyes must look like that too. She's realizing that they have something in common, even if that something is pain and trauma.
Can I just say, I don't think that Rowan necessarily saved Aelin, but I think that he was part of the reason why she like was able to pick herself back up. And I think that like without each other, like they really would have just been dead and soulless for like ever. Like that joy would have just been gone because she does the same thing for him in turn. And
They
it's
saved
honestly
each
so important.
other.
Yeah, they really did, to be honest. But unfortunately, this moment doesn't last. Like, Selena taunts Rowan by telling him that Maeve must be pissed at him and that training her is punishment. Rowan tells her not to talk about Maeve in that tone, but of course, Selena doesn't back down and tells him she can use whatever tone she wants, which, like, as you should, you go, girl. And that Rowan would have to rip out her tongue to make her shut up. Like, okay. So what does Rowan do? He grabs Selena's tongue between his fingers. She bites down hard, but he does not let go. And she tries to hit him, but he dodges and traps her against a tree, which, like, that's kind of hot. But
And then it happens. Quote, he released her tongue and she gasped for breath. She swore at him a filthy, foul name and spat at his feet. And that's when he bit her. She cried out as those canines pierced the spot between her neck and shoulder, a primal act of aggression. The bite so strong and claiming that she was too stunned to move. He had pinned her against the tree and clamped down harder, his canines digging deeper, her blood spilling onto her shirt, pinned like some weakling. But that was what she'd become, wasn't it? Useless, pathetic. She growled, more animal than sentient being, and shoved. Fantasy has fucked me up so bad because all I could think on this reread is like, hot, hot, hot. And like, we've talked about this leading up to this moment, but like, Rowan literally cannot help himself. We've touched on this before, but in Queen of Shadows, we learned that this bite sends Rowan on a spiral. Selena's smell has like struck him from the moment that he met her, and tasting her blood drives him crazy. In Queen of Shadows, he says, quote, from the moment he'd bitten her neck in Wendland, the moment he'd tasted her blood and loathed the beckoning wildfire that crackled in it, he'd been unable to get it out of his system. Initially, Selena sees this bite as a primal act of aggression, but she also describes this bite as claiming, which is exactly what it actually is. Rowan is biting his mate, claiming her, even if neither of them realize it in this moment. Rowan will eventually claim her in this way in Empire of Storms and again in Kingdom of Ash. And honestly, in this moment, I'm just like, just hate fuck against the tree. I know you want to. Like, I know you do. But this bite pisses Selena off so much because it once again shows her that she can't fight off Rowan in her human form. She feels useless and pathetic and weak.
honestly, if they would have hate fucked right there, that would have been much better than like the first time. Because like, why did they fuck on a beach? Like, I don't get it. Like, I would have much rather preferred them fucking on the tree than on the beach. But that's not, that's whatever. But, and so using that anger, she shifts. Rowan's response, he grins and says, there you are. Blood. Her blood was on his teeth, on his mouth and chin. And those dead eyes glowed as he spat her blood onto the earth. She probably tasted like a sewer to him. I just think it's really funny that she thinks that she tastes like a sewer to him. Like, babe, he's eating this shit up. Like, he wants to bite you again if he could. And Rowan, like, is unable to get the taste of her blood out of his system.
Selena is seeing red, and she's out of control. The fire is rising, and Selena is scared of setting the whole forest on fire. But Rowan encourages her. He tells her to let it out, to not fight the fire. Quote, a pulse beat against her, nipping, smelling of snow and pine. Rowan's power, taunting hers. Not like her fire, but a gift of ice and wind. A freezing zap at her elbow had her falling back against the tree. The magic bit her cheek now. Magic attacking her. The wildfire exploded in a wall of blue flame, rushing for Rowan, engulfing the trees, the world, herself, until it vanished, sucked out into nothing along with the air she was breathing. This is the first time that we see Rowan and Aylin's powers like playing together. Selena says here that Rowan's power is taunting hers. He's using his power to challenge hers. And his power, and he smells like snow and pine. Rowan starts using his magic to attack her to get her to explode, and it works, but once again, Aylin's magic is like out of control. And then he uses his power to control the wind and basically suffocates her.
Selena realizes that Maeve picked Rowan to train her for a very specific reason. Quote, such power, such control. Maeve had not given her an instructor with similar abilities. She had instead sent someone with power capable of smothering her fire, someone who wouldn't mind doing it should she become a threat. Rowan is really her balance, and he can train her because his power can smother hers. And while she hates that in this moment, it's actually kind of perfect if you think about it, because Selena does fear her magic getting out of control, but knowing that Rowan can get it under control will allow her to eventually trust him enough to train with him. And this is also very similar to what Evelyn, Aylin's mom, was able to do when Aylin was a child and her magic was out of control. Evelyn's was able to use her water magic to extinguish Aylin's fire. Along with the mind speaking, this is yet another hint to the Karanam and their mating bond.
I love them. Once Selena can breathe again, Rowan asks a very interesting question. He asks Selena if her lover knows what she is, and Selena replies that Kale knows everything. Rowan's reaction? Quote, his eyes flickered. With what emotion, she couldn't tell. I won't be biting you again, he said, and she wondered just what he tasted in her blood. She growled, but the sound was muted, fangless. Even if it's the only way to get me to shift? She's like, bite me. Anyway, he walked uphill to the ridge. You don't bite the woman of other males. She says that his eyes flickered and she can't tell what emotion it is. It is jealousy. I 100% think that Rowan was jealous in this moment. And then he reveals that the bite isn't just like this primal act of aggression that Selena thought it was. He won't bite her again because Fae males don't bite the woman of other males. And Rowan's like essentially admitting that he crossed the line, and Selena doesn't really understand Fae customs. So she doesn't understand why this is such a big deal until later on when she's like, Rowan, bite me in Empire of Storms.
And the honesty hour just continues between these two. Quote, she heard, more than felt, something die from her voice as she said, we're not together, not anymore. I let him go before I came here. He looked over his shoulder. Why? Flat, bored, but still slightly curious. What did she care if he knew? She curled her hand into a fist in her lap, her knuckles white. Every time she glanced at the ring, rubbed it, caught it gleaming, it punched a hole right through her. She should take that damn thing off, but she knew she wouldn't. If only because the near constant agony felt deserving. Because he's safer if he's as repulsed by me as you are. At least you've already learned one lesson. When she cocked her head, he said, the people you love are just weapons that will be used against you. Selena reveals that she broke up with Kale before coming to Wendelin. And I love that Rowan just can't help himself because he is curious. He does want to know why. And Selena's response honestly just really breaks my heart because she wants Kale to literally be repulsed by her and to be disgusted by her because it'll keep him safe. And Rowan's response, he gives so much away in this moment. The people you love are just weapons that will be used against you. And from that, we can tell that Rowan's trauma goes deep as hell. And Selena is just scratching the surface of how far it actually does go. We also see that Selena still wears the amethyst ring that Kale gave her, but it's just another way to cause herself pain.
Rowan's comment that the people you love are just weapons that can be used against you triggers memories of Nehemia for Selena. Quote, she didn't want to recall how Nehemia had used herself against her to force her to act, wanted to pretend she wasn't starting to forget what Nehemia had looked like. She was forgetting what Nehemia had looked like. The shade of her eyes, the curve of her lips, the spell of her laugh. The roaring in Selena's head went quiet, silenced by that familiar nothingness. Do not let that light go out. But Selena didn't know how to stop it. The one person she could have told, who might have understood, she was buried in an unadorned grave, so far from the sun-warmed soil that she had loved. Nehemia used herself as a weapon to get Selena to act, so Rowan's words do cut deep. And this language, I love that we just saw the Assassin's Blade because this language is so similar to what Selena experiences after Sam's death, and she realizes that she can't remember the color of his eyes. Selena starts realizing that she can't remember what Nehemia looked like. And she knows that Nehemia wouldn't want her light to go out, but she can't help thinking that Nehemia's gone and no one else would understand how she feels. She lost her one friend. It's so sad. And Selena thinking of Nehemia being buried so far from the sun-warmed soil that she loved is so heartbreaking.
Rowan doesn't realize that Selena is triggered though. He wants Selena to shift again. He's like, hello, are you fucking listening? Wake up. And Selena taunts him to bite her again if he's so pissy that she can't shift. And unfortunately, Rowan triggers Selena further. Quote, why don't I give you the lashing you deserve? He looked so dead set on it that she blinked. If you ever take a whip to me, I will skin you alive. This is not one of Rowan's finest moments. This whole little segment is not one of his finest moments. Rowan doesn't know about Selena's past in Endovir, so he doesn't really understand like why this sets her off. And when he does realize what Selena's been put through in Endovir, it sets him off and he wants to destroy whoever whipped her. Rowan legit kicks himself for this comment later on because he realizes why she reacted in that way. And then in true full circle, when Rowan realizes that Karen had whipped Aelin, he skins Karen alive. A plus Rowan, no nos, as you should have.
But in this moment, he still doesn't understand Aelin, and so he threatens her with double duty in the kitchens, and he tells her that she's worthless. And worst of all, he tells her, quote, "You probably would have been more useful to the world if you'd actually died 10 years ago." Guys, Brooke just said it. Like, it goes without saying that these are not Rowan's finest moments. These also aren't Aelin's finest moments. This is a nasty thing to say, but I do want to make the point that this level of honesty between the two of them is what opens the door for like their relationship to blossom. Them having the ability to like say these nasty as fuck things to each other opens up those doors. And Rowan is hitting her where it hurts. There are many moments where Celaena can't understand why she survived, why she's still here, and she does feel useless to Terrasen.
I think also too, though, like with Celaena and Rowan, we've talked about this before. They match together so well. And I think that like out of everyone, he has been the only one that talks to her with this type of honesty, which like, again, helps her be able to like open up through it because she's like appalled. Like, what the hell? Like somebody actually is going to talk to me like this? Like I'm the one that usually talks like that. Not saying that it was right, but like it is helpful to them in the future. But anyways, this triggers Celaena to pack up and leave. Celaena is done with her plan. She'll have to find another way to stop the king and find the word keys. And Rowan doesn't really try to stop her, but he does ask her if this is what she does when things get hard. Does she just run away? Has she never had to fight for anything in her life? And Rowan doesn't know what Celaena wants from Maeve, but he knows if she leaves, she's not going to get the answers that she came for. Quote, "You don't know what I want from her?" It was more of a shout than a question. How about saving the world from the king of Otterlin? Why bother? Maybe the world's not worth saving. She knew he meant it too. Those lifeless eyes spoke volumes. Because I made a promise to my friend, that I would see her kingdom freed. She shoved her scarred palm into his face. I made an unbreakable vow, and you and Maeve, all you goddamn bastards, are getting in the way of that. She went off down the hillside again. He followed. And what of your people? What of your own kingdom? They are better off without me, just as you said. His tattoo scrunched as he snarled. So you'd save another land, but not yours? Why can't your friend save her own kingdom? Because she is dead, she screamed, the last word so loudly it burned in her throat. Because she is dead, and I'm left with my worthless life. He merely stared at her with that animal stillness. When she walked away, he didn't come after her. Again, this whole entire like thing just like really breaks my heart because Celaena reveals to Rowan why she's there, and Rowan, who is also so broken, just like doesn't really get it. Like he's not picking up what she's putting down. And again, Celaena notices that his eyes are lifeless. Rowan is dealing with his own kind of pain and emptiness, but this moment it isn't about that. And Celaena's mission is personal. And this is the first time that like Rowan is learning that. And it's not just about stopping the king, it is about her promise to Nehemia. And Celaena sees Rowan, Maeve, and the Fae as obstacles to her in this moment, not as allies. And Celaena believes that her own kingdom is just better off without her. So she's focusing on Nehemia instead. She can't abandon Elwë the way that she feels like she abandoned Terrasen.
With that, Celaena takes off. She's kind of just like wandering aimlessly in one direction, which like you don't do that in a forest because it's also getting dark and cold and she's getting tired. So she starts a fire and settles into a cave. The little folk do visit her again and they just kind of like watch her from a distance. And she thinks through her decision to leave. Quote, she'd made a smart choice to leave. Do what needs to be done, Elena had told her. Well, she'd needed to leave before Rowan shredded her into so many pieces that she would never stand a chance of putting herself back together. Again, we see that Celaena is leaving here because she is trying to protect herself. Rowan's training feels like too much. His harshness is pushing her past her limit, emotionally and physically. And it's interesting, too, that Celaena is still focused on putting herself back together. By the end of this book, I don't think she does that. I do think that by the end of this book, she kind of like rebuilds herself into someone/something new. And I think that's why Celaena had to leave. Rowan's training was harsh, yes, but like the real root issue of this is that Celaena isn't ready to rebuild yet. She's not ready to face herself and become someone new. And that is what Rowan's training is pushing her to realize, that it's not about putting herself back together. It's about totally starting new and rebuilding who she sees herself as.
Selena drifts off, but the sudden silence in the caves jerk her awake. She smells something disgusting. It smells like leather and carrion. And she realizes how stupid she was for starting a fire because Rowan's number one rule while they were traveling to Miscord was no fucking fires. And Selena realizes that fire has led skinwalkers straight to her cave. She takes off running, but the skinwalkers are on her trail. As she's hiding out behind a tree, someone grabs her because Rowan came for her. He didn't leave her, even though they said some fucked up nasty things to each other.
Rowan pulls her against him and tells Selena that if she doesn't shift, she'll die. She's too slow in her human form, and for once, Selena doesn't hesitate. Quote, she stiffened, but reached in, feeling for some thread of power. There was nothing. There had to be some trigger, some place inside her where she could command it. She's trying. It's such a big turning point that she tries here. She's trying for Rowan for her own safety, but she is trying. But she doesn't find anything. She can't figure out how to trigger her shift.
And while she's trying to figure this out, the skinwalkers are still coming closer and closer. And Rowan says that his wind power is of no use here. The freaky fucking skinwalkers don't breathe. They need fire. They need her. And so Selena tries again. Quote, though every instinct screamed against it, she closed her eyes, took a breath, then another. Her lungs opened, full of cool, soothing air, and she wondered if Rowan was helping with that too. He was helping, and he was willing to meet a horrible fate in order to keep her alive. He hadn't left her alone. She hadn't been alone. There was a muffled curse, and Rowan slammed his body against hers as if he could somehow shield her. No, not shield her. Cover her, the flash of light. Later, Rowan asks her how she was able to trigger that shift, and she tells him it's because she didn't want him to die trying to save her. And Rowan asks if she'd shift for herself, and basically she just says no, which I feel like is it's just such who she is, honestly. And we see that so clearly in this moment, she realizes that Rowan is helping, and he didn't leave her alone. He stayed and could die trying to keep her alive, and that's what triggers the shift. And can we just honestly take a second? The first time Aelin shifts willingly, purposefully, is to keep Rowan safe. Her mate, her Karanam. I am tearing the fuck up.
I love them. I have to pause here. I hate that we're saying skinwalkers 100 times. Guys, I hate that we're saying that word because I know the lore. The lore is that you don't say the word because it calls the skinwalkers to you. I live in the city. There are no skinwalkers around here. Brooke, prayer is up to you. But yeah, you're not supposed to say that word. I'm sorry that we're saying it. I know the rules, but it is what it is.
Wait, why are you just now telling me that? I didn't know that.
Just came to my mind. But you're okay. You're okay. Don't worry. Just don't go outside in the dark. Anyway, they take off. The skinwalkers are following again, and they're fucking creeps. And Rowan is being so nice. I guess nice is the best word in comparison to how he's been acting. He's slowing down. He's keeping pace with her. He's holding her up when she stumbles. And as she runs, she gets a flashback to the night that she almost drowned in the Florine River. Selena realizes the skinwalkers aren't going to stop. Her and Rowan's only option is to fight back. As they jump, she commands Rowan to shift. And thankfully, he fucking listens. And then Aelin unleashes herself. Quote, then she ripped everything from that well inside her, ripped it out with both hands and her entire raging, hopeless heart. As she fell, hair whipping her face, Selena thrust her hands toward the skinwalkers. Surprise, she hissed. The world erupted in blue wildfire. Again, can we just take a second? Not only has Aelin shifted purposefully for the first time to save Rowan, she's using her fire to save him, which she fears so much. She fears that fire so deeply, but she is willing to use it to save him in this moment. And we get that language of the well inside of her again, which is, again, how her magic is often described. I love the sass here. I love that she says, surprise, and then she sets those fuckers on fire.
Selena and Rowan take some time to recover. She's cold and exhausted and honestly still a little terrified from their encounter with those things. And her fire is everywhere. Bitch, I don't play about that shit. No, I actually don't. I don't actually play about that shit at all. I don't fuck with that shit.
To be fair, it's where they exist. And skinwalkers are not in the Illinois area if they exist. It is more Tennessee, Kentucky. That is folklore in Tennessee and Kentucky and Oklahoma. But yes, don't say it if you don't want to. I don't want you. I get it. Go on.
Cool.
I'm sorry.
The forest was burning on either side of the river, a radius that she didn't have the nerve to measure. It was a weapon, her power, a different sort of weapon than blades or arrows or her hands, a curse. Despite using it to save herself and Rowan, Selena still views her power like a tool for battle, not something beautiful or good. Her power still feels like a curse. Instead of her feeling strong, she feels afraid of what her magic might do to others, and honestly, like to herself. So much of Selena's journey in this book is gaining control of that power and learning to use and love her fire. And also like learning not to be afraid of it. But here she still is.
Selena asks Rowan if he can put it out, which actually he's been secretly putting out the fire for a while. And then they kind of have a heart-to-heart. Selena asks why shifting is so important in terms of her training, and Rowan says that shifting matters because it terrifies her. He knows that her fear is holding her back, and mastering that fear is the first step to gaining control over her magic. Rowan isn't just training her physically, he's helping her start to face what she's running from.
And Selena describes her magic as a well once again. Her power feels deep and overwhelming, like it has no end. And Rowan asks, have you felt the bottom of it? Rowan is checking whether she's pushed herself far enough to know like what her limit is. And Selena is not really sure. She hopes that there is a bottom, which again shows just how afraid she is of being consumed by her powers.
Rowan does take the time here to explain different aspects of magic to Selena. With stronger magic, it takes longer to fully reach the bottom. And we see that, like when she is saved from being captured by Maeve, she's been going into that well for 3 months, which is why she can blast that fucking wave in Kingdom of Ash. But weaker magic is quick and shallow. Selena's magic is powerful, so it takes time to build, like drawing from a deep well.
And Rowan warns Selena that overusing magic leads to burnout, mentally or even physically. Her body shaking after the river fire wasn't just from the cold. It was her magic warning her to stop. Her magic is too powerful, but it comes with serious consequences if she pushes it too far.
Selena brings up the iron in their blood, which pushes against the magic. Rowan shares, quote, that's how our enemies will sometimes try to fight against us if they don't have magic. Iron everything. He must have seen her brows rise because he added, I was captured once while on a campaign in the East in a kingdom that doesn't exist anymore. They had me shackled head to toe in iron to keep me from choking the air out of their lungs. Let's break this down because there's a few really interesting things here. One, this is unfortunately foreshadowing for what happens to Aelin at the end of Empire of Storms and the beginning of Kingdom of Ash. Maeve uses this technique to control Aelin. She locks her in the iron coffin with the iron mask and the shackles so that Aelin can't access her magic. But two, let's talk about that campaign in the East. You guys know I whip out the map all the time. Wendlin is to the east of Aurelia, but what is to the east of Wendlin? What is considered east of Wendlin? We don't know, and it's going to haunt me. What is this kingdom that doesn't exist anymore? I have so many questions about this little tidbit that Rowan shares here. The fact that we don't get a map of Wendlin, again, haunts me. We need a map of the East. I need information because what do you mean this kingdom doesn't exist anymore?
We spiral about this at least like once every month, or maybe once or twice, about Wendlin and how we never get a map for Wendlin, which is so interesting considering we get a map of Antica when we enter into Tower of Dawn, and we just like never get a map of Wendlin, which is very interesting to me. And I'm sure we will talk about this in our Massverse episode. So
yeah, it's so there's something there. We spend this whole book in Wendlin.
Yeah, it's really crazy to me. But anyways, this heart-to-heart continues and they're both opening up. I am honestly so proud of them. Like it only took them facing that scary thing to get these two to stop fighting. And Selena asks Rowan if he was tortured when he was captured. And in a heartbreaking parallel, Rowan was tortured in the exact same way that Sam was. Selena thanks Rowan for saving her, and Rowan replies, a slight shrug, barely a movement at all, as if her gratitude were harder to endure than her hatred and reticence. I am bound by an unbreakable blood oath to my queen, so I have no choice but to ensure you didn't die. A bit of that earlier heaviness settled in her veins again. But, he went on, I would not have left anyone to a fate at the hands of those things. These two are still figuring out how to communicate, and Rowan struggles with the emotion that Selena shows here. His tiny little shrug shows he's uncomfortable with the kindness. Maybe it touches something raw in him, and it's easier when they're just like at each other's throats. And Rowan hides behind his duty by saying he only saved her because of his blood oath to Maeve. But honestly, like, the Prince Rowan is in denial because that's simply not true. It didn't get to this point here, but these two are mates. Rowan would not and could not have let Aelin get hurt or killed because, like, simply mates can't do that. But Rowan does let himself admit that he wouldn't have left anyone to those things, showing he does have a moral code and some compassion.
I'm obsessed with that. The refusal to say the word. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I simply just like don't fuck with shit like that. So I don't even put those I don't watch any scary movies that have to do with paranormal stuff. I don't fuck with that kind of shit. So
I didn't know that about you.
I don't know. I don't play with that.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Valid. I did mean to go in there and like put a note in and like take it out if like we didn't want to say it, but then I forgot.
It's okay.
Rowan comments that it does seem like Aelin had some control over her magic during that shift. She didn't immediately lose control when she shifted. Her clothes and her hair didn't burn, and her daggers didn't melt. Is this praise? Is this like the smallest little compliment from Rowan? I'm gonna take it as a yes. This heart-to-heart ends with Rowan telling Aelin that she is not leaving. Quote, he was quiet for long enough that she wondered if he was piecing the bits of her together. You're not leaving, Rowan said at last, arms crossed. I'm not letting you off double duty in the kitchens, but you're not leaving. Why? He unfastened his cloak. Because I said so, that's why. And she might have told him it was the worst goddamn reason she had ever heard and that he was an arrogant prick had he not tossed her his cloak, dry and warm. Then he dropped his jacket in her lap too. When he turned to go back to the fortress, she followed him. I love these two. I love them. This is such a good sign that they are going to figure this out. This is Rowan kind of setting a boundary. He won't let her run from everything. He is blunt, but he does care. He offers his comfort silently. Instead of saying something nice, he gives her, a warm and dry cloak instead. Rowan's actions do speak louder than his words in this moment too. And Selena accepts. She doesn't argue or run. She follows him, showing a tiny little small step toward trust. This is actually like a small turning point in their bond. And I just want to like hug these two and tell them that like it's all going to be okay. And I do I didn't put this in there, but like I do think it's interesting that like Rowan will always continue to be an actions over words person. Like when it's the end of Empire of Storms, like he goes to all of his cousins' ships and like tells them the story about like falling in love with Aelin and like, it's just sweet. I love him.
Oh, I love them so much. But anyways, we are now on to our witches. Let's just say things are a little tense at the Omega. The clans are separated to try to keep the brawls to a minimum, but they still interact in the mess hall during meals, which is usually when shit goes down. And who is starting shit? Iskra, of course. She needs somebody needs to punch her, like literally punch her straight in the nose. She taunts Manon about rumors that she was once the best flyer in all three clans, which is true because as Manon should be. But Manon doesn't let Iskra get under her skin because she's got bigger things to focus on. Quote, and when all of Manon's 12 sentinels were seated around her, 13, from now until the darkness embraced them, Manon allowed herself a smile too. They were going to fly today. Manon has got her crew, okay? And also, this is the first time that we get that iconic line, the 13 from now until darkness embraced them. It just brings back so many memories. And Manon, who is supposedly heartless and soulless, she's fucking smiling because she's going to fly today for the first time in 10 years. And honestly, it brings me so much joy for her. Slay, queen.
Manon and the 13 head to the cliff where they'll practice. They saddle up and get on the Wyvern. And their first flight, it is beautiful. The witches are triumphant. They're howling. They're back in the skies all together. Manon tries to keep her emotions under control, but it's clear that this is just a big moment. Quote, the 13 were airborne again. The world spread beneath them, and ahead, far to the west, was the home they would someday reclaim. But now the wind caressed and sang to her, telling her of its currents, more of an instinct than a magical gift. An instinct that had made her the best flyer in all three clans. What now? Astrid called. And though she'd never seen any of her 13 cry, Manon could have sworn there were tears shining in the corners of her cousin's eyes. I say we test them out, Manon said, keeping that wild exuberance locked up tight in her chest. and reined her mount toward where the first canyon run awaited them. The whoops and cackles of her 13 as they rode the current were finer than any mortal music. We've said this before, but witches aren't supposed to feel. They're raised to be soulless, but this scene shows that they do feel, and deeply. Asterin has tears in her eyes. Manon is trying to keep her excitement locked up tight. Iron Teeth witches don't have magic like the Fae, but here Manon's connection to the wind feels like magic as you read it. The wind speaks to her. It almost feels like an instinct. Manon will bring up her connection to the wind again and again throughout the series, and this is never confirmed, but like I said, we do learn that the Iron Teeth witches don't have magic like the Fae, but the Kraken witches do. So I do wonder if this connection to the wind hints at Manon's Kraken side. It does feel very, very intentional. And to Manon, the whoops and cackles of the 13 are better than music. The joy of her friends is better than a good song. She loves them and loves to see their happiness, even if she can't really fully express that yet.
After their flight, Manon meets with her grandmother. Her grandmother is pleased with Manon and the 13. Their crossing was the best so far. And Manon's grandmother gives her a mission. Manon is to become wing leader. She doesn't care how Manon does it, but there is really no option. She will be wing leader or she will be nothing.
And now, back to Ricktold. Dorian started sparring with the guards. Training is important. Duh. It's got nothing to do with wanting to visit a certain healer. Truthfully, Dorian can't stop thinking about Sorsha and what she shared the last time that they talked. Quote, he hadn't been able to stop thinking about what she'd said in his room, or wondering why someone who had lost everything would dedicate her life to helping the family of the man who had taken it all away. And when she'd said, because I had nowhere else to go, for a second, it hadn't been Sorsha, but Selena, broken with grief and loss and rage, coming to his room because there was no one else to turn to. He'd never known what that was like, that loss, but Sorsha's kindness to him, which he'd repaid so foully until now, hit him like a stone to the head. Dorian is haunted by Sorsha's words, and still he cannot understand why she'd help the king's family after all she's lost because of the king. And Dorian can't help but see the similarities between Sorsha and Selena. When she says, I had nowhere else to go, he sees Selena in her, wounded, alone, and full of rage. And Sorsha, despite everything she has been through, she is gentle and giving, especially to Dorian, someone who is so connected to her pain. And again, Dorian admits his privilege. Dorian has never felt that kind of loss or pain, and it does hurt my soul that the first time Dorian does experience this kind of loss is when he loses Sorsha. SJM, again, sick and twisted for this.
Have you ever heard that TikTok sound where it's sick and twisted? You know what I'm talking about?
That is what I reference when I write sick and twisted in the outlines.
I love that. I love that so much. Because SJM, you are low-key sick and twisted, but give me 100 more. Give me 100 more books. But anyways, he goes to visit Sorsha, and because Dorian is Dorian, he flirts with her, because of course he does. He can tell that he flusters her, and he likes it. He likes Sorsha. But Sorsha has questions, mainly about what killed people in the castle before Yulmis and what attacked Fleetfoot. Dorian is honest with her, but his magic starts flaring up. Quote, Dorian couldn't stop the ice spreading through him. Sorsha rubbed her arms and glanced at the fire. It was still burning high, but shit, he had to go now. Sorsha said he'd killed her, wouldn't he? That's why you said nothing. Dorian slowly started backing out, fighting against the panicked, wild thing inside of him. He couldn't stop the rising of ice, didn't even know where it was coming from, but he kept seeing that creature in the tunnels, kept hearing Fleetfoot's pained bark, seeing Kale choose to sacrifice himself so they could get away. Sorsha stroked the length of her dark braid, and he'd probably kill the captain too. His magic erupted. We can tell that Dorian's magic is flaring up when the room gets cold. Dorian realizes he's gotta go. He needs to skedaddle. But Sorsha keeps going, and what she says triggers memories that trigger his magic. And honestly, at this point, Dorian cannot control his magic yet. So when he's feeling strong emotions, his magic literally explodes out of him. And what's the thing that finally makes his magic explode? The thought of his father killing Kale. The foreshadowing here to the end of this book it's too much. It is too fucking much, bruv. Too fucking much.
Dorian's magic is still mostly manifesting as ice. During this flare-up, his eyes glow, he shatters all the glasses on the table, and ice coats the floor. Thankfully, the blast of ice and wind does shut the door, which keeps other people from seeing what actually happened in there. But once again, Sorsha proves that she is a ride or die. That was a bad term to use, but you do know what we mean, because she does die. After Dorian's magic explodes, she quickly comes up with a plan. Sorsha is a smart, quick thinker. With Dorian's help, they flip over the table and make it look like Sorsha accidentally knocked everything over. Quote, it was what she'd promised the prince in the minutes after his explosion, when her shaking ceased and she'd seen him. Not the magic, but the panic in his eyes, the fear and pain. He wasn't an enemy using forbidden powers, but a young man in need of help. Her help. She could not turn away from him, could not tell anyone what she'd witnessed. It was what she would have done for anyone else. In the cool, calm voice that she reserved for her most grievously injured patients, she had said to the prince, I'm not going to tell anyone, but right now, you are going to help me knock this table over, and then you're going to help me clean this up. I'm going to say this, and I think we said this last episode, I do have so much more appreciation for Sorsha on this reread. After Dorian's magic explodes, she notices not the power, but the fear and pain in his eyes. Sorsha sees the human in Dorian, not the threat. She knows Dorian isn't a danger to her. He's just a scared young man who needs help and doesn't know how to control things. Instead of turning him in, she promises to protect him, just like she would for anyone else. Sorsha is compassionate and good. She keeps Dorian calm. She takes control of the situation. And I love that in this moment, Sorsha becomes Dorian's protector. Helping Dorian puts her at risk, but she does it anyway because it's the right thing to do. And that is just who she is.
Amethy, which, okay, but she tries to make Sorsha feel bad about all the broken tonics and concoctions, but Sorsha knows not to let it get to her. Dorian is absolutely shook, but Sorsha tells him that she will try to see if maybe there is a tonic that can suppress his magic, and she's going to try to help him. And then there's Chaol, who is trying to track down Adian, who is once again missing from the parties he's apparently supposed to be at. He follows Adian into the slums to try to figure out what the fuck he's up to. And as he's trailing Adian, Chaol's thoughts are on Dorian. Cool. Larger implications aside, if he could find out not only how the king has stifled magic, but also how to liberate it before he was dragged back to Aniel, then Dorian's secret might be less explosive. It might help him somehow, and Chaol would always help him, his friend, his prince. All Chaol wants to do before going back to Aniel is secure Dorian's safety. Their bromance is honestly like the real love story in this series, if we're being so for real. Like, you're telling me he's saying his prince isn't like, it isn't a little like, you know, like they're not in love with each other.
Like, as like the gay one in this podcast, this is a little gay. His prince, like in the best way. I love them, but they're in love with each other.
Thank you. I'm glad you said that because I was like, I don't want to get canceled.
No, I agree. Chaol isn't as sneaky as he thinks, though, because he does get caught. And who catches him? The same dudes who captured him the night Nehemia was killed. It's Ren and Murtaugh. I think it's Alsbrook. Yeah. Adian's there too, obviously, since that's who Chaol was following. Adian calls Chaol a spy, and Chaol accuses him of sneaking around, and they all go back and forth. But then Chaol tries to warn the rebels. He tells them that the king keeps Adian on a tight leash and glances at Adian's black ring. This immediately catches Adian's attention. At this point, the ring is just a sign of being under the king's influence. They don't know yet about phallic possessions, but this ring is what made Chaol so sus about Adian to begin with. Quote, Adian smiled broadly as he yanked the black ring off his finger. The day the king presented me with the sword of Orinth, he also offered me a ring. Thanks to my heritage, my senses are sharper. I thought the ring smelled strange and knew only a fool would accept that kind of gift from him. So I had a replica made. The real one I chucked into the sea. But I always wondered what it did, he mused, tossing the ring with one hand and catching it. It seems the captain knows and disapproves. We've talked about this before, but Adian is demi-fae and could smell that something was off about the Wordstone ring. And Adian is not stupid. He knows the king is not to be trusted. He knew it was a trap, even if he did not understand what kind of trap it was. But he played along. Instead of confronting the king, he quietly made a fake and threw the real one away. In Queen of Shadows, Aelin uses this exact same technique to trick Erebin.
I think it's also interesting here, though, that, like, when Aedion was like, I could smell that something was off with it, like, how is he able to use his Fae sense of smell if magic is gone?
Because that's not tied to the magic.
Is it really not?
No, because, like, when Rowan shows up in Queen of Shadows, he can also use his scent. I think that's just how
Okay.
they're built. Just like how we are built like humans, I think the heightened senses and, like, the speed is not connected to magic. It's just like the powers are.
Okay, that makes sense. So anyways, Cale realizes he's basically told on himself. Aedion mentions that Ren and Murtaugh called Selena a rebel sympathizer and wondered if she's the one who told Cale about the rings. Aedion hints that Cale is a traitor, and Cale realizes he had it all wrong. Well, Aedion was a traitor, but not to Terrasen. Aedion had been playing a very dangerous game since arriving here, since his kingdom fell 10 years ago, and tricking the king into thinking that he'd been wearing his ring all this time. That was indeed information Aedion would be willing to kill to keep safe. Yet, there was other information Cale could use, perhaps, to get out of this alive. And another reason why Cale was so sus about Aedion is that he knew Aelin wouldn't tolerate her cousin being a traitor to Terrasen. And realizing that Aedion never betrayed Terrasen and instead tricked the king is important because it allows Cale to consider giving Aedion the, like, important information, like that Aelin is alive. Cale also knows that Selena is safe and he can trade that piece of information because ultimately, like, his goal is, like, he needs to protect Dorian. Quote, but Dorian, with his magic, what the threat he secretly posed was not. Aedion took a readying breath to kill him. Keeping Dorian protected was all he had left, all that had ever really mattered. If these rebels did indeed know something, anything about magic that might help free it, if he could use Aedion to get that information. Cale knows he will have to leave for Aniel in 2 months, so he's trying to make sure that Selena is safe, and this is his opportunity to secure that, like, for Dorian, and, like, that's all that has really ever mattered to Cale, which is so sweet. And again, Cale thinks that the best way to protect Dorian is to free magic, and his best bet for that, these rebels.
And so Cale drops a bomb on Aedion. He says Aelin is alive, and we immediately switch to Aedion's POV for this, and he's just, like, feeling a million things. Quote, Aiden Ashriver had been called wolf, general, prince, traitor, and murderer, and he was all of those things and more. Liar, deceiver, and trickster were his particular favorites. The titles only the closest to him knew. Adarlan's whore. That's what the ones who didn't know him called him. It was true, in so many ways, it was true. And he had never minded it, not really. It had allowed him to maintain control in the north, to keep the bloodshed down to a minimum and a lie. Half the Bane were rebels, and the other half sympathizers. So many of their battles in the north had been staged. The body count of deceit and an exaggeration. At least, once the corpses got up from the killing field under the cover of darkness and went home to their families. Adarlan's whore. He had not minded until now. Just like Aelin, Aedion has gone by so many names, and he kind of lists them off here. Wolf, general, prince, traitor, murderer, Adarlan's whore. To those he knows, he's a liar, a deceiver, a trickster, because they know that he's not actually doing all those things for the king. He's been labeled everything from a hero to a villain, and he owns all of it. But just like Aelin, Aedion has, like, been rebelling in his own quiet ways. He's sacrificed so much in order to keep up the appearance of serving the king, and I love that they've both been doing that in, like, their own secret ways. By faking loyalty and staging these battles, Aedion kept rebel forces alive and reduced actual real bloodshed. But now that he knows that Aelin is alive, these titles, like, kind of haunt him.
So why do these titles haunt him? Because, quote, cousin, that had been his most beloved title. Cousin, kin, protector. Those were the secret names he harbored deep within, the names he whispered to himself when the northern wind was shrieking through the staghorns. Sometimes that wind sounded like the screams of his people being led to the butchering blocks, and sometimes it sounded like Aelin, whom he had loved, who should have been his queen, and to whom he would have one day sworn the blood oath. Honestly, like, this just really makes me, like, tear up, because, like, out of all of the names he's been called, cousin means the deepest to him. And, like, deep down, he identifies as kin and guardian to Aelin, not as a general or a traitor. And those are his true names: cousin, kin, protector. The roles that matter to him aren't public. They're personal, quiet, and sacred. And now that he might actually get to fulfill those roles, his emotions are like really all over the place because he's haunted by like the loss of his people. But even after all this time, like Aelin has stuck with him. He loved her and she was meant to be his queen. And he honestly feels like he failed her in so many ways. And the blood oath he never got to swear, the cousin he couldn't protect, these losses still haunt him and hurt him the most.
I love that his favorite title is cousin. I think that is so cute. Protecting Aelin's name is how Aedion even ended up working with Ren and Murtaugh. Aedion was pissed that someone dared lie about Aelin and came to Rifthold to get to the bottom of it because it was like a rumor. Like people were talking about like Aelin Galathynius is alive. Aedion looks at the Sword of Orinth and thinks about all it represents, that it's, quote, the last shred of proof that a mighty kingdom once existed in the north. Aedion knows the sword should have been Aelin's, and that's why he fought so hard to win it back from the king, who stole it from Ro Galathynius' body. That's Aelin's dad. So fucked up. When Aedion finally won the king's favor, he asked for the sword. But winning the sword back didn't erase all the other ways that Aedion feels he failed. Quote, even though he'd been 13 and even though he'd been 40 miles away in Orinth when Aelin had been killed on the country estate, he should have stopped it. He'd been sent to her land upon his mother's death to become Aelin's sword and shield, to serve in the court she was supposed to have ruled, that child of kings. So he should have ridden out when the castle erupted with news that Orlin Galathynius had been assassinated. By the time anyone did, Ro, Evelyn, and Aelin were dead. Just like Aelin, Aedion was a kid when Terrasen fell. But just like Aelin, he blames himself. We've talked about this before, but like this is not logical thinking. Could a 13-year-old have stopped any of this from happening? No, but guilt is not rational. Aedion feels like he failed at his duty before it even really started. He was sent to protect her, to be her sword and shield, and he blames himself for not acting quickly. But again, he was truly too young to do anything about it. Everything happened too fast. By the time anyone responded, her whole family was already dead. Aedion's entire identity is built around the role that he should have played, and it obviously like continues to shape his choices. And that should sound familiar because that is Aelin to a T. But instead of feeling joy that Aelin is alive, he just feels really guilty.
And that is why he carries the Sword of Orinth. Quote, it was that reminder he carried with him on his back, the reminder of who the sword belonged to, and to whom, when he took his last breath and went to the other world, he'd finally give it. But now the sword, that weight he'd embraced for years, felt lighter and sharper, far more fragile, infinitely precious. The world had slipped from beneath his feet. Earlier in this book, when Aedion tells Chaol that symbols have power, he meant it. Aedion carries the Sword of Orinth to remind himself of Aelin and his promise to her. He knows the sword isn't his, that it belongs to her, and one day he'll give it back. He thought his chance would be in the other world, but now he might actually get a chance to give it back to her in person. And now that he knows Aelin is alive, the sword feels lighter, but also somehow much more fragile. And learning that Aelin is alive shifts honestly everything for him. The world he built around grief and duty is crumbling, and now he has to face this new reality.
Aedion listens as Chaol tells him the story of Celaena Sardathian, of all that Aelin has been through these last 10 years. Chaol tells Aedion that Aelin has his eyes, and Aedion spirals about possibly coming face to face with Aelin again. Quote, right now, he was emptied, gutted. Every lie, every rumor, and act and party he'd thrown, every battle, real or faked, every life he'd taken so more could live. How would he ever explain that to her? Otterlin's whore. Again, like I'm like really like struck by how similar Aedion and Aelin are. Despite just listening to Chaol talk about how Aelin was an assassin, how she worked for the king, how she went to Endovir, Aedion is worried about what Aelin will think of him. And we've seen this exact same spiral from her end. Part of her hesitation to step into her role as queen is that she doesn't know how she's going to explain her life to the people of Terrasen, to her court. She also feels like she's not like worthy of it. And like Aedion feels the exact same way.
And Chaol tells Aedion that he knows it was a risk, but he hadn't seen the changes in Aedion that he'd seen in the other men who wear the black rings. And that ultimately Chaol thinks that Aelin would want him to know she's alive and out there. Aedion asks if Dorian knows, and Chaol tells him no. Dorian doesn't know Aelin is Fae, or that she has magic. And then Aedion asks the most important question of all. Quote, is she coming back? Chaol replies, I don't know. And the pain in Kale's eyes tell Adion that he loves her. Not just that, but knows her well enough to love her that much. And Adion can't help but feel jealous a little bit about just about that. And Adion tries to convince himself that Aelin will come back. She has to come back.
Adion is also just desperate to learn more about his lost long cousin, his queen. Quote, he wanted to know more about Aelin, about her plans, about what she was like and how he could find her. He wanted to know everything, anything. I can't imagine how Adion feels in this moment. They grew up together. They were besties. They were cousins. We get so many flashbacks in this book where he's with her and he spent the last 10 years mourning her, mourning Terrasen. And now she's alive and he knows nothing about her. They have literally 10 years of catching up to do. And now he's and she's on another continent. It's heartbreaking. The whole thing, this whole moment, I was just really feeling for him. This set of chapters ends with Kale telling Adion he wants to make a deal with him.
And next, our favorite moments. These are moments in this set of chapters that we really just loved.
I really love this set of chapters, so it's hard to pick a favorite moment. But the 13's first flight is definitely one of my favorites. There is just so much joy in the moment. You can feel it on the page. It honestly made me emotional rereading it. Because earlier, Manon literally describes being grounded as agony. So again, I've never been able to fly. I wish, but I just can't imagine being able to fly after not being able to for 10 years. And my other favorite moment is kind of in the same category. Adion finding out Aelin is alive after 10 years is definitely my other favorite moment. The way SJM writes this moment, it just hits you like a ton of bricks. You feel how it hits Adion, and you just see how the shock of the moment brings up a bunch of emotions for him and memories. And I know I said it when we were doing the foreshadowing and analysis part, but Adion saying that cousin was his most beloved title is it's just so sweet. The whole section also reminded me just how similar Adion and Aelin are, not just in appearance, but personality.
I have two favorite moments from this set of chapters. My first is when Selena and Rowan are going back and forth, and Selena's talking about how she can use whatever tone she wants. You would have to basically rip out her tongue, and then Rowan just grabs her tongue with his fingers. Just I don't know. It just sums up basically how their love-hate relationship is right now, how their hate relationship is right now. And I also just couldn't imagine being in the middle of talking and somebody just grabbed my tongue. No, literally, what do you even do after that? What do you even do? I don't know. But my next favorite moment happens during Dorian's POV. He reflects on when Sorsha had told him that she had nowhere else to go. And he basically just talks about how Sorsha reminded him of Selena with the broken grief, loss, and rage. And this kind of is just a moment for him where he is thinking about how he needs to be a better man than his father. And I mean, obviously, Dorian has always been better than the king. But I think that in this moment, he realizes that he still has growing to do and that he can still continue to grow as a man and as future king. And I just I don't know. I just love Dorian. So. And lastly, our final thoughts.
I love this set of chapters. There's just so much happening and there's so many big revelations and moments. The multiple POVs are all so engaging. And I really do love seeing the journey that each character is on. I think it's really, really special to revisit it and be back in it. And like I said, I've said this in previous episodes, but Heir of Fire really is my comfort book in the series. And I'm just loving being back in it.
I also loved the set of chapters. Honestly, I just really love this whole book. But anyways, I'm just going to say I also love the short, quick chapters that we are getting in this book. And I think that continue to happen throughout the rest of the series because they just get straight to the point. They have so much information in it, but it's also just it doesn't feel rushed, but it feels you're getting the information you need to know straight to the point. But I don't know. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I love this series because it's that the chapters don't feel so long that I'm okay, what's happening next? But they're the perfect length to keep the story progressing and to keep it to keep you interested. Because one thing about me, I hate a long chapter. I hate long chapters. I loathe them because I don't know. Something in my head makes me feel when the chapters are short, I'm reading the book faster, even though I don't know. But anyways,
that is girl math.
No, literally, it is girl math. I'm oh. like if a book has one chapter that's 20 pages, but like I just read 3 chapters in 20 pages, I'm going to be like, I'm reading it faster. I'm fast as fuck, boy.
I love that.
Okay, thanks. Anyways, that wraps up our deep dives for chapters 16 through 22 for Heir of Fire. We hope you enjoyed our analysis and theories. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok, where our handle is @BookishRealmsPod.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on these chapters, so drop us a comment or send us a message. Also, leave us a rating if you liked what you heard. It really helps us out.
Join us next week when we continue our Heir of Fire deep dive with chapters 23 through 29. Until then, keep reading, Assassins.
Bye!